there's roughly 300 to 400,000 empty jobs, open jobs in the home building industry in the United States. So we're competing with other industries that are also in a shortfall of people with skills. You can't build a home unless you have the carpenters and the bricklayers and the concrete guys and the engineers and the surveyors and the home inspectors. At any given time, there's probably 15 different trades on a home build. And so as a country, we kind of got away from the skilled trades and everyone had to go to a 4-year school and get a degree. We're all paying the price for that right now.
Welcome to the Builders Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creasa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
This week, I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Mark Pursell. And if you don't know who Mark is, well, that made two of us up until the point I had that conversation. And I have to say, what a fascinating story. The life this guy has led, the positions that he's held, that ultimately put him in charge of, he's the president and CEO of the National Housing Endowment Fund. And that is the philanthropic arm of the National Association of Home Builders. Now, before you say, Michael, what do I care about that? Well, you should care. Let me share with you this one little statistic. For every 5 people in the trades that are retiring right now, only 1.5 are coming back in. So literally for every 5 that leave, only 1 is coming back in. We have a tremendous demand for housing. We don't have the manpower to get it done. So what Mark and his team are trying to do is educate, provide funding to a whole new generation of people that may not have otherwise been interested in the trades, let alone know about them. So it was a fascinating conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. And by the way, speaking of enjoyment, please, I need your help. Subscribe, like, and share. Subscribe, like, and share. It's the only way that our podcast can cut through the noise and get out there so more builders like you can share in the knowledge that I'm providing. There's no advertising here. We don't have any sponsorship other than the benevolence of Sound Capital, which is our parent company. So once again, please subscribe, like, and share. And without further ado, or my lips sticking together, let's get into this conversation with Mark Pursell. Well, Mr. Mark Pursell, I'm excited to have you on the call today. You've got this pedigree that's extensive. When I was reading your bio, I was waiting for the movie to come out because frankly, it's so deep and so friggin' cool. and I want to touch on that and what you're doing now with the National Association of Home Builders. But first of all, my Canadian etiquette demands me to say welcome, and I hope you're having a great day.
Well, Michael, thanks for having me here. I'm always excited to talk about the National Housing Endowment and our work in the workforce development arena and what we're trying to do to help the next generation build the next generation of American homes.
Well, I'm looking forward to covering a lot of ground. And as the hat says, game on. So that's our Canadian acronym for we're going to have fun, and we're starting off. So before we dive into what you're doing now, let's rewind the clock once upon a time, because I look at you as you're a man of service. And it seems, as again, reading through your bio, that leadership has been a fundamental goal that you've pursued, but it's also who you are. Your character is based upon leadership. And when I compare you to like a Jim Tobin, who's the CEO and president of the National Association of Home Builders, I jokingly said, what laboratory were you made in? Because unlike regular children that walk around with cowboy hats and want to be a fireman or a policeman, I was teasing Jim that he was born with a briefcase and it was already destined that he was going to be a CEO of something.
Mm-hmm.
Let's rewind the clock back to when there was a young Mark playing in the field, doing whatever Mark did. Was that always on the horizon? Like, what was it that you wanted to be when you finally grew up?
Well, I mean, leadership I don't know that it's a destination as much as a journey. I didn't grow up in the fields. I grew up on the icy ponds of Michigan playing ice hockey. A nod to my Canadian friends. I played a lot up in Ontario in the junior leagues and loved it. But I grew up with a great family. My mom was a school teacher, taught 4th grade for 40-something years. And so she was the bedrock of our family. My dad was a real leader in the community and then nationally. He had a printing business, and then he got into local politics and became a county commissioner and a state senator, and then ran for the United States Congress and won in 1976. One of the few Republicans were elected that year. That was right when Nixon was coming out, so it was a tough year for Republicans. And so I was around leadership my whole life, and I guess I just absorbed it. I can't say that I grabbed the ring. It was just around me, and I'm thankful for that today, and hopefully I bring something to the table.
Interesting. You said your father was running a business, a printing business, so like
Mhm.
flyers and that kind of thing. That he's got that entrepreneurial spirit, like my father, and I call it a blessing and a curse because it instilled in me the ability that being able to survive on my own merits. But the flip side of that blade is I'm unemployable because I'm so self-sufficient, I can't work for anybody. Do you
Sure.
suffer from the same curse? Was that something that your father instilled in you?
That's a great point. There's always a tension there when you have some, I guess, when you have some leadership thoughts or abilities, is the ability to work for someone else and to respect authority is always a tension. It's one that I always thought about and was fortunate enough to have great bosses over my career who I respected and got along with well. And I think they respected me and my opinions and thoughts and drivers. So it worked out. But you're right. It's tough when you're self-driven to work for somebody else. Today I report to a board of very strong people of 40 builders and developers who govern the National Housing Endowment, and got to understand, who your boss is. We all have bosses, and I don't care how high you go. A CEO of the largest corporation in America reports to a board of directors somewhere, and you need to respect that. And I always have.
Yeah, I've got one that carries a rolling pin and she's shopping right now. So I can be the man of the cave
Yeah,
temporarily until she gets back.
yeah, exactly.
So when you weren't shooting hockey pucks and skating rinks, eventually you wound up in university. What was the destination at that point?
Well, I was toying with the idea of playing hockey in college, and I decided against it. I was never going to go anywhere with it. And I got into the University of Michigan on academic basis, and was a no-brainer. This was in the early 80s, and it's a great school. I grew up half an hour from Ann Arbor and always loved Michigan, loved the school. And, the minute I got in there, I knew that that's where I was going.
Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's where we did our black belt gradings for Aikido
Mhm.
because the head instructor for North America was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. What a small world, man.
Yeah, it's a great town. It's changed a lot, but it's really a college town. The school's really integrated with the city of Ann Arbor, and I really enjoyed my time there. And I met my wife there, which is probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And that was over 35 years ago. And my second daughter ended up going to school there.
That's a good answer. I should cue that so we do it again. What was the best thing that's ever happened to you? You met your wife in Ann Arbor. That'll score you a lot of points, I think, Mark.
Yeah, I'll have to play this for her.
Yeah. What was the first major career? I don't want to call it a job, but vocation that put you in leadership?
Well, I'll take a step back. I graduated on a Thursday. I went to work on a Monday selling 401k plans, which is, you're Canadian. I'm not sure that you're familiar with 401ks, but they're voluntary retirement programs that were just created at the time. And it was fortuitous because it turned out a lot of companies were in trouble with their defined benefit programs and were looking for other types of retirement programs to provide their people. So I learned basic selling skills, literally marched door to door throughout the thousands of industrial parks that are in the state of Michigan, especially in southeastern Michigan with the auto industry, knocked on doors, got thrown out on my butt, and tried to educate and talk to people about 401k programs. I did that for a few years, and it was hard, but I'm thankful for it because it really taught me that those basic selling skills and, the old adage, you got to make 100 pitches to have 10 people talk to you, to have one person actually sign on the dotted line. I lived that at a formative time in my career and my life. Always comes back to me. I always say, nothing happens till somebody sells something. And I still believe that's true. And then I lucked into a really good job in Washington, D.C., which brought me to D.C. and working for a European investment institution. It was my introduction to construction, financing the construction of large industrial projects all over the world, mostly in the developing world. So I got to travel a lot, went to over 85 countries and was involved in some very large projects and learned the construction industry because I had to, because we were financing projects on the front end and progress payments and everything else, and sort of heavy industrial construction. And did that for 9, 10 years, and it was a great job. Thought I would do that the rest of my life. I really loved it. And then the bank said enough of North American exposure, and I was out of a job. Didn't know what a trade association was, and I ran across a listing for vice president of marketing at the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. And because I knew construction and had some selling skills, again, one of my great bosses, Bob Garbini, decided to take a chance on me. And that was my introduction to trade associations, which I fell in love with. The idea that there's this organization that's gathering the initiatives and the thoughts and the issues and all the things that industries wrestle with that they need to take on as a group together. They can be stronger, whether it's going to Capitol Hill and lobbying on issues, or a state capital or a local municipality, or trying to figure out standards for an industry. There are some things that we need to do as a group. And the idea that there's this group of people that are organizing an entire industry around these various issues and topics was rewarding and fascinating to me. And that was the start of my involvement with trade associations. And I love the ready mix concrete guys. I love the construction guys, and just their salt of the earth. And as I love the builders and developers I work with today.
Yeah, when you say ready-made concrete, I think of cement shoes, which is kind of appropriate for Michigan and Detroit, I would think more so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
When
Jimmy
you talk
Hoffa
about,
reference there.
yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think wise guys, but what the Sopranos, that's what I was trying to think, the
Yeah.
show Sopranos. Now that you've got a taste of this, and I'm focusing on the political lobby aspect of this, how do you learn that? Because you're navigating these waters with politicians, influencers, and it seems that you either survive or thrive on your ability to communicate, be able to create relationships. Is that something that, how do I say, like you developed along the way, playing hockey, university, through the encounters that you had, your father? Was that something that was taught to you when you got involved in the association? Were those skills somehow brought to the surface and honed that they could be applied into your new career?
Well, I think it's, being involved in team sports, ice hockey, you learn to work with a group of people. You got to talk to each other all the time. You got to have accountability as a group. And then basic selling skills, which is the ability to communicate an idea and find a need or a solution, and to sell that need or solution, was something that I had some practice in. And then the great thing about the American system is, and I marvel at it today, is that you or I can walk into the United States Capitol, can go knock on a congressman's door or senator's door and get an appointment or talk to somebody on staff, and maybe even talk to the congressman or representative about whatever issue that you may want to talk about. And to me, that's a great liberty and freedom that we have here. Obviously, there's more security these days with all the things that have happened in the world, but you can still do it. And being able to get there and concisely communicate why your message is important and why you need some help on something, and how it can help them, help their district or their states, is a great thing. I think something that a lot of Americans take for granted. I think a lot of lobbyists take it for granted. To me, I just marvel. Every time I walk in the United States Capitol and talk to a congressman or senator or their staff, I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. And I hope that never goes, because a lot of countries, you can't do that. You never have access. And
Well, you made reference to Reagan at the beginning. I remember that famous quote of freedom is only one generation away from extinction.
yeah,
And when you look north of the border, I listen to you and envy that you can just walk in and talk to a politician. Here, if I say the wrong thing, I'll end up in jail because if I trigger them or I've offended them, that's how crazy things are north of the border right now.
Yeah, that's a shame because your elected leader should hear from the people and the people's ability to talk to them honestly about things that are affecting their lives enables those leaders to make good decisions that are good for the people. And without that, you're lost to some sort of ruling class deal that never works out. It's never worked out in the history of mankind, and I don't know why anyone thinks it would now.
Well, even at a fund, and I don't mean this to be a lesson, political science, but fundamentally, your politicians have to swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. We don't have that in Canada. They swear an oath to the king that we don't have. So,
Mhm.
okay, you've got an allegiance to a third party that has really no relevance in Canada anymore. And so there's nothing really to hold them to account. And we're seeing how that is now manifesting across Canada in terms of the policies that they're making. And I'll probably end up in jail saying this, but the blatant corruption that's involved right now
Yeah.
at the federal level and working its way down, it's pigs at the trough. And once upon a time, it was kind of understood that's what the political system was, but it was hidden. Now it's blatantly obvious to the point where nobody cares. And that's sad.
Yeah, and whenever politicians or statesmen or elected leaders, whatever you want to call them, aren't accountable to the people, things are going to go sideways, and they always have, and they always will. And it's pretty basic. And democracy is a mess. Watching the sausage get made can be ugly, but at the end of the day, it's the best system we figured out so far as a people.
Yeah. Let's do a pivot here. There's a part of your bio that kind of intrigues me, the Premium Cigar Organization or Association. Tell me about how, so in terms of your ascension to power, where did that one come in and what was it all about?
Well, I left the Ready Mix Concrete Association and eventually ended up meeting Jerry Howard, who was then the CEO of the National Association of Home Builders, the role that Jim Tobin now plays. And Jerry was looking for a sales and marketing guy to bring together the association's business activities, primary of which is the International Builders Show, and was looking for a business person to take over the management of that, the day-to-day management. It's a large operation, as you can imagine, 100,000 people, 1 million square feet of exhibits, the primary source of revenue for the association, but more importantly, the primary gathering place for the industry once a year, where everybody gets together and learns about new products and services, networks, receives education about what's going on, works on their certifications, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big event, a big show, and a lot to put that on. So I did that for 14 years, and along with a number of other business operations at the association, and really enjoyed that, but frankly got burned out on it. I was working 50 plus hours a week and commuting and doing everything else and raising a young family, and always had a love for cigars. You can probably see my humidor here somewhere in the background. And I'd never been a CEO and wanted to be a CEO. We talked about that a little bit earlier. And the CEO position opened up at the Premium, what is now the Premium Cigar Association. And that was interesting because one is I love the product and the people that are in that very small industry, but they were moving the association from Southern Georgia up to Washington, D.C., because all of a sudden they had a federal regulation problem that they never had in the history of the industry going back 200 years. And the FDA was going to regulate cigars like they regulate cigarettes. And that was going to, if not shut down, really change the industry, the family nature of the industry, and frankly was wrong. And the association, the industry needed to be in a position to fight that. And they had to do that from Washington, D.C., where that fight was taking place. So I led that effort, built a staff. Back to construction, probably the funnest part about the job was we bought a small building in Washington, D.C., and we gutted it and retrofitted it, put offices in there, created some space that we could lease for a little bit of income. But we also created a very cool, probably the coolest cigar lounge you'll ever be in in the building. We got the permission to smoke cigars in there. And we use that as a platform for lobbying and would invite congressmen and senators over. Those who we had created something called the Cigar Caucus and held a number of fundraisers all the time, events there, and use that to communicate the industry's message and could do lobbying on our home turf while we're enjoying the product and talking to decision makers about it. So it was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot more about construction because I acted as the construction manager on site every day, making decisions about finishes and structural elements and the air handling system and all kinds of stuff. It was a lot of fun.
What is it about that? Is it the tactile experience of men in a room, bourbon in one hand, cigar in the other? That it fuels, conversation. It fuels creative thinking and being able to put deals together.
I always put it like this: cigar is a gift. A cigar is a gift you give to yourself because it takes typically a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour to smoke a good premium cigar. Well, when you're smoking that cigar, you really usually don't have your phone in your hand, which I think is a big deal nowadays. And if you're doing it with a friend or a business colleague, you have a chance to actually talk to each other, which I think is rare these days. So I think there's a lot of value in actually taking some time out to talk about the issues of the day or your personal life or whatever the case may be. So it's an enjoyable experience. It carves out a little time to do that.
Yeah. Prior to COVID, I was teaching realtors how to do video marketing using their cell phones, getting over the fact I'm too fat, too ugly, anything with a two up front of it. And I was a stage speaker, so I would be hired to be up front of 50 people or 1,500 people, depending on the venue. And there was a gentleman who was kind of like an icon in real estate coaching, Floyd Wickman. If you're in residential real estate, you would know who this guy is, like old school, wonderful trainer. And I was hired to be on stage to present, and Floyd was there. So it was actually, so to me, this is, if you play guitar, it's like being with Elvis on stage. So it was,
Sure.
this is the high point. And I got to introduce him. Then we kind of joked around a bit on stage. He did his thing, I did mine. And then afterwards, he invites me out for dinner. And this is in Vegas. So we go to a steakhouse. I don't even remember where it is. Have a great meal. And at the end, he says, "Hey, Mike, how would you like a cigar?" I thought, yeah, okay, sure, Floyd, let's go have a cigar. And in this restaurant, as you said, there was the cigar room, and you got all these guys are puffing away and they got a bourbon or whiskey, whatever they're drinking. So I've got rye in one hand, cigar in the other, lit this thing up, and we're, shooting the shit sort of thing. And Floyd goes, "What do you think of that cigar?" And I said, "Floyd, I don't know, I don't smoke." So like you could have just rolled up a twig and given it to me. Like, I really don't know. And he looks at me with this, profound look. He says, "I don't smoke either, but I thought it was something that we should do." And so you got these two knuckleheads that know nothing about cigars that are smoking away. So I thought you would appreciate that as being a connoisseur.
Yeah, it really is. And it was an opportunity for you to talk to Floyd and communicate with him. And you weren't staring at your phone all day. You were working on your brandy or your whiskey and your cigar and, able to develop thoughts. So it's a great thing.
Yeah, one more puff and then we'll move on to another topic. So are the best cigars still in Cuba, or where do you get them?
Obviously Cuba has a long heritage of great cigars, but I consider it a little bit like the wine industry where, you've got great wines out of California, out of the great Northwest, and then you've got great wines from Europe, from Italy and from France and other regions of Europe. And it is a climate-driven product, so the actual leaf is subject to the conditions. All cigar tobacco is grown near the equator. It needs a lot of rain and a lot of sun, and you only get that near the equator. And you get some. Now, most of the cigars here in the U.S., the leaf is grown in the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, or Honduras, some in Brazil. And they compete very well with the best Cuban cigars. And frankly, I think some of those are better because cigars are one of the few sources of hard currency the Cubans have. I mean, what do they got? They got rum, sugarcane, and cigars. So they don't tend to their fields as well as the for-profit farm managers, cigar manufacturers that you have in these other countries that rotate crops or let the field rest and those kinds of things. They don't have that constant pressure to generate hard currency. And all the companies in Cuba, of course, are nationalized. But there are still great cigars coming out of Cuba, don't get me wrong.
So can you go online and literally order like a really good cigar from, say, an Amazon, or do you have to go to like a store that specializes in cigars? Like, how do you even go through that?
There are three primary online sites to get great cigars, or you go to your local cigar retailer and actually touch and feel. And in most cases, you're able to smoke them right in there and find the cigar that you like the best. But you can't buy them on an Amazon or another online site. There's some age verification that's required. There's a process that you have to go through, but they're readily available to adults, and it's an adult product. You don't see 15-year-old kids spending $25 on a cigar. It's going to take 45 minutes to smoke. There's not a child use problem like there was with cigarettes, and we have now with vaping and e-cigarettes and all that other stuff. Cigars are an adult product, and back to the regulation, should be regulated that way. And that was one of the messages we communicated to the regulators and to Capitol Hill.
Yeah, again, when you talk about regulations, it makes me laugh because I put it in a Canadian context. It's like I can drink booze to the point where I fall down, but I can't buy unpasteurized milk. God forbid.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, okay, sorry. Let's get off this topic because I'll just go nuts. Let's go back to the trade show and your days at the trade show. Is it fair to say this is like the largest juggernaut of a trade show on the planet when it comes to home construction?
Yes, it's the largest annual construction trade show in North America. And there's one that's bigger that only takes place every 3 years. That's the ConExpo show. That's for very heavy equipment, mining equipment, logging equipment, like you buy a lot of up in Canada, and huge construction equipment. That's only every 3 years in Las Vegas, and that's a massive show. But as far as an annual trade show, the International Builder Show is the largest annual construction show.
So it's fair to say that when you were in charge of the trade show, the event occurs, let's say, it's done, you're wrapping up, you're already starting to plan for next year's trade show. This is a full-time gig, and it's not
Yes.
something. So
Not just that then, but you're planning 10, 15, 20 years out, because you have to reserve the exhibit space, the convention center where the show is actually held, all those hotels where people are staying. You don't make those arrangements on a month or 6 month or 1 year basis. You're looking out, if you're planning your show properly, you're looking out a decade or more.
tell me about the logistics of this. Like, how big of a team would you have to actually put this together? And as you said, you're already planning years in advance. This isn't just a handful of people. This is like a dedicated army that you have.
It was at our peak. We probably had around 50 people that worked on that show. They spent 80-90% of their time doing that all year round. And it's everything from, I mentioned, hotel contracts, convention center contracts, it's security, it's medical, it's the marketing of the show to attendees, it's the education, it's lining up the speakers, it's the entertainment, it's the special events. And this is all well before, I'm not even talking about all the work that goes on the trade show floor, setting up the trade show floor and laying that out and selling that space and assigning exhibitors to a specific location and working through all those logistics and working with the dozens of vendors that are involved in putting on a show. So it's a lot of people that it's a full-time job for, give or take 40 or 50 people.
It's almost like you've created a city. There's a moment in time that this trade show is literally like a major metropolitan city that you've created, because you just mentioned you got the infrastructure, you've got security, you've got medical, you have to worry about food, accommodations. It literally is a city that you're running until it unpacks, and then you're starting it up all over again.
Absolutely. It's, I think I did the math one year that the trade show floor itself, just the floor, was about 85 football fields of construction that takes place in a period. And you only get if you're lucky, you get 5 days. Typically, you get 3 or 4 to set all that up. And then you get 2 or 3 to knock it down at the end. So you've got to set up all those exhibits. That's all got to be coordinated and done without people killing each other. And you've got to lay down you got to put up the aisle signage and all the aisle carpeting. And every year it's different. So it's quite an exercise. And that's not to mention, the transportation, the shuttle bus network, working with the taxi companies and all the meetings. NHB is a large organization. It's a very large national association. So north of 500 meetings are taking place during the show, north of 200 educational sessions. So all those meeting rooms got to be coordinated. They got to be outfitted. The speakers got to be there. People got to know where they're going, all that kind of stuff. It's a complicated endeavor. It's a lot of fun.
Spitball number, what's the draw per year, roughly?
The draw for year for the International Builders Show is roughly 80,000.
Wow.
And then one of the deals that I worked on that I'm very proud of was the co-location with the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, or KBIS, which was a separate trade show. It was run at a different time and maybe in a different city. And started talking to those folks, and we figured out we had a lot in common. Obviously, the kitchen and bath is an important area of the home. A lot of in common exhibitors. It's very expensive for an exhibitor to be at a trade show. They've got to bring all their people there. The cost of exhibiting is exorbitant. And for all those exhibitors in common, we basically have their annual trade show cost for the year by putting the shows together as one. So that really worked out.
I'm really excited about this year because it's the first one I'm going to. And Sound Capital, that keeps the lights on for this podcast, is sponsoring the bookstore. We'll have a booth there, and we'll be doing interviews live from the thing.
Oh,
so,
great.
Really excited about this. So
I will see you there. The bookstore actually reported to me when I was running the business operations of the association. And again, that's another thing that the association does is educating members, whether it's through formal classes or designations, so people get the letters after their words, but also through publications like the performance guidelines they publish, or it could be a safety manual, or it could be how to market your product. All those things that are communicated through the great works of the bookstore, both in print and online, are outstanding.
Well, we've come up with a book that we're giving away to builders that educates them on how to apply capital. And it's a great book, and we'll be giving it away. So, but a side note, you just said something there that triggered me. How to. This thing you said is what, 7 football fields in size?
The trade show?
Yeah, the International Build Show that's coming up this year.
Oh, well, guys, now with the KBIS, it's probably over 100 football fields, just the trade show floor.
Okay, so let's put on your contractor hat, your developer hat, right? You're not just going to walk in there and go, doodly do like Homer Simpson. As the guy that's organized this for 15 years, how do you set up your day? How do you plan to attack this thing so you can get the most out of it for your nickel? So I'm showing up. I can't just be wandering around with the wind. There must be purpose to it. So are there any kind of insider secrets, tricks that builders can apply when they go in here to get the most out of their time?
I always think of it like when you go see a Smithsonian museum or in Washington, D.C., you could spend a lifetime and never see what you really wanted to see. And so you've got to do some planning, and the attendance marketing staff for the International Builder Show spends a lot of time trying to educate attendees and give them the tools so that they can properly plan for spending a lot of money to be there. You got to pay for your airfare, your hotel, your meals. Maybe you're bringing another staff or a handful of staff with you. It's an important business opportunities for builders, contractors, developers, because you get to meet with your vendors all in one spot. But there's thousands of them, literally. And I think there's 2,000 exhibitors at the International Builder Show. And so there are online tools, so you can go to buildershow.com and plan out your week and figure out where you want to go. There's great online mapping tools so you can see where you'd be walking and plan your schedule accordingly. There's a great app, so you can do it right on your phone and follow it that way. But spending some time before you just land at the airport and say, okay, now I got to figure out what I'm going to do, really pays off because you've got those vendors that you've got to see, whether they're existing vendors that you've got relationships with that you need to cement or talk about next year's business or what that looks like, or you want to learn about new products. Maybe you want to do something different in the lighting area or the kitchen area or flooring, and you've heard about something. So you want to see what this company's doing, what they have to offer. Hitting that must-hit list, I think is important, but also scheduling some time just to wander around. I do hear from a lot of builders and contractors that, man, I was just walking around the floor and I saw this thing. It was really cool. I'm going to start using this. So, there's something to be said for serendipity, but at the same time, builders and contractors and construction folks in general like to have things planned out. That's innate. And the show does a good job of giving people the tools to do that.
Yeah, Mark, you kind of sounded like Shakespeare for a second there. It's when you're not looking, you find the thing that you weren't looking for.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm going to re-ask you this question again. I want to be more strategic about it. Let's pretend, Mark, that you're a production builder. You're putting out about 50 homes a year. You want to scale. You're shooting for that next level. Maybe it's 100, incrementally, whatever it is. So again, I'm going to put this back on you. You're getting ready to go to the show. Let's say we're a couple weeks out and it's running for what, 4 days?
3 days.
3 days. How do you get the most out of this? Like, again, I'll put it to you. Is day number 1, I'm going after vendors. Day number 2 is education. Day number 3, I'm trying to pick up all the things that I missed. And to your point, I'm going to wander around and just see what kind of mischief I can get into. Like, from your experience, is there a way, again, the question is, how do I get the most out of this experience?
Well, I would start with buildershow.com with the website. Understand the schedule of the show. Some of the education takes place the day before. There's obviously the trade show floor that opens up. There's some special events that you may want to go to. You may want to see the opening ceremonies, keynote speaker. You may want to participate in some of the evening activities, etc. So I would understand what your week's going to look like. And then I'd start filling it in. And I would fill it in with the education that I want to attend, make sure I'm signed up for that. And then I would start looking at the exhibitor list. And that's provided at buildershow.com, is also provided on the app that they push out to all the attendees so that you can start thinking about, okay, you're going to know what companies you want to go see that you've been doing business with. Maybe a very large company that provides you with exterior cladding, for instance. You're going to want to go see them and talk to them about how this past year went. Maybe you're going to see your representative to the company. You're going to have an agreement to meet there at a certain time at their exhibit so he can show you what they're doing different going forward. You're going to have those list of companies, but then you're also going to have things that you want to learn about. And it may be that your experience at the builder show is not something you can do all by yourself. And I talk to builders and developers and contractors all day long, and they come with the team and they plan it out. So, maybe the safety guy is going to come and he's going to learn about not only safety education, he's going to attend those classes, but he's got some vendors that he works with for, harnesses and clothing and PPE and that kind of stuff. So he's going to go see them. And then you have your chief of construction who's going to want to go talk to various vendors. And you may have a finish guy who needs to see a different set of vendors. And so a lot of companies come. Some of them come all by themselves, a husband and wife. I see walking around all the time. So they're tackling everything. They need to plan things out well, but it may be that you have a group that you're taking with you, but the same thing applies. It's so large that you can get lost and overwhelmed if you don't do a little bit of planning and provide some structure to the days that you spent there.
Those are great tips. Plan ahead of time, get organized. I love the idea of coming in with a team, and each one, it's like a SWAT team. You're going here, you're going there. And at the end of the day, we come together and then, okay, what did we learn today? I mean, that's exactly a brilliant tip. The other thing that's got me excited about this build show is you call it the Great American Home?
Yes.
And this
the new American Home.
Yes. So I interviewed the boys from Allaire. They're involved quite heavily in this, and it's a passion project for one of them because the person that is actually paying to build the home has an
Hmm.
autistic child, and there's commonality there. That aside for a second, the home itself boggles my little brain because one of the features, just one, is an underground garage 12 feet deep. So I'm thinking Florida, 12 feet deep. It's like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. And yet they've pulled it off that it's an underground parking. You drive your car down, and you probably remember the old show Batman, when the car would come into the Bat Cave and it would spin on that
Yeah.
carousel. It has a carousel, and it actually has racks to rack your cars all
Yep.
underground. I thought, man, that's worth the price of admission by
Yeah.
itself.
I can't wait to see that. Tucker Bernard, who leads that effort for NAHB. Matter of fact, I was with him earlier this week and he was telling me about that underground garage, and I can't wait to see it. The new American home is about what's possible. It's always a fantastic home. It's not your typical average American home, but it's a great opportunity for a builder who does build the typical single family home to learn about what's possible in the kitchen, in the bathroom, in the living areas, even in the garages. And because a lot's happened to the American garage in the last 20 years. So it's really a showplace for all the new technologies and materials and engineering that can go into a home. And it's all there at the New American Home. And they're also doing a New American remodeled home this year, which is increasingly a larger share of the residential construction market here in the US.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I love the idea that you've brought together some of the best trades in the world with the most cutting edge, if you will, technology in construction. And somehow there's the orchestra leader, the band leader has pulled them all together with that common vision of, yeah, let's make this sucker sing. I'm really looking forward to it like a kid at
Well,
Toys R Us.
the home is kind of the epitome of what I always say about the International Builders Show is you walk around and you can't help but think, God, I'd love to have that in my house. And it could be the outdoor area. You see some barbecue and smoker units and that kind of, God, I'd love to have one of those. Or you see the lighting area or the tools area. It's all stuff that you want to have. And that really comes to the fore at the New American Home where you see, man, this is the best of the best.
This is almost like a flag worth waving for the National Association of Home Builders that you guys had the vision to be able to pull this all together and showcase what is possible. And you've got builders, even though we're in a competitive landscape, obviously, because I'm building homes to make a living, you're building homes to make a living, but everybody shakes hands and said, let's get this done. And it's a matter of working together and celebrating what this industry is all about. So I got to tip my hat to you to come up with that idea and to be able to orchestrate it, implement it, and put it on show for everybody to see.
That goes back a long ways. I think the Builders Show just celebrated its 75th anniversary last year, or the year before. So the Forefathers Association had a vision. The show originally started in Chicago, and they brought together the industry. It was really an outgrowth of World War II, when all of a sudden we had all these young men coming home from the war that needed a place to live. They may have went to the war as boys, but they came back as men and they wanted to start families. And so the demand for housing was great. I think it was President Roosevelt who came to the industry and said, you need to get organized and figure out how to build a lot of homes because we're going to need them. And that was really the birth of the National Association of Home Builders and the genesis of the show. Started in Chicago. Then people figured out, okay, we need to go someplace a little warmer in January, February. And the show migrated around the country. And now it's settled it'll be in Orlando this year and then in Las Vegas for the foreseeable future.
One more question about the show, then we'll segue into which is the sweet spot for you, the endowment. 15 years running this thing. Was there ever a moment, and this is kind of what happens behind the curtain that nobody sees, that one of those things that, I don't want to say catastrophic, but it's one of those events where stuff didn't arrive in time or something didn't jive, whatever that is. And like me, we're follically challenged. I donate my hair. Was there that moment that you're literally at the point where you're going to tear your hair out because it's just not coming together?
Well, I used to look like Michael Landon until I started running that show. I'll start with it's every year I would be amazed that the whole show came together. And I would always tell the staff, I go, look, if it's broke now, it's too late to fix it. So let's just ride. Because it's so many different moving pieces coming together. It's the people, it's the attendees, it's the exhibitors, it's the vendors, it's the convention center itself, it's the police, EMTs, on and on. It doesn't end. And the fact that it all comes together and works every year is amazing to me. I would say that, the biggest sort of trough in my career running the show was the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. We saw very early running the show what was coming down the pike because people weren't buying exhibit space because they weren't getting orders for shingles because the builders and developers had shut down because capital was no longer available. And that was a tough time. The show shrunk in size greatly, both in terms of exhibit space and attendance, as did the U.S. housing market. We went from building 2 million homes a year for several years to 400,000 a year for several years. A depression by any metric of the word, and somehow the value and the importance of the show maintained itself. And it was a tough time. I had to let go a lot of staff. A lot of builders and developers went out of business. Fortunes were lost. Lives were ruined. It was a tough time. It was a tough time for the country, but it was a really tough time for the industry, for the association, for the trade show. And getting through that process is probably the thing that I'm most proud of in my career because there was, I had to buck it up and had to keep the team positive and working, which was hard to do. It was a tough time. And I came out the better for it, learned a lot, made a lot of changes. Never waste a crisis is the old expression.
Yeah.
So we made a lot of changes that we wanted to make, but we couldn't make before because no one wanted to mess with success. Well, when the ground's pulled out from underneath you, okay, I got to grab onto a new hook here and do something different. And NAHB was nimble enough to do that. And the leadership was trusting enough in the staff to make the changes. So it was a huge, tough learning experience.
Yeah, but you came through stronger on the other side, so kudos, man. Let's make the segue now to your latest passion project, which is the endowment fund. How did you make that pivot from being in charge of the show? Was it something that kind of just fell into your lap, something that you were eyeing for a long time, or just did the stars align a certain way and there you are?
Well, the timing of it worked out great for me personally. I had been running the Builder Show, and then I left to run the Cigar Association. And all of a sudden, this position at the National Housing Endowment opened up. And I'd always looked at the endowment and thought, what a great mission, what a great organization, very focused and dealing with helping young people find careers in housing. How can you not believe in that? And that position opened up and I applied for it. Fortunately, the board decided to hire me, and I was a known quantity because I knew all the members of the board because I was on the leadership team at NAHB. The endowment itself is a separate 501c3 organization, often described as the philanthropic arm of NAHB, but it is a separate organization with separate budgets, separate bank accounts, a separate board of trustees. And so it's its own entity. And so they were looking for a new CEO at that time. This was in 2018. And I applied for it and got it and thought, okay, I'll do this for a couple of years and this will be my job into retirement. And I think I'm starting on year 8 or 9 here and no end in sight because I love it.
How is it funded? Is it a percentage of the dues that come in, or do you guys have to do your own fundraising? How does that come to be?
We do our own fundraising. It is funded through donations. NHB does support us. They give us office space. They give us accounting services, legal services. They make a donation to the skilled labor fund that I'll talk about, but we're primarily funded. We are a true endowment. We have a corpus. We have a principal portfolio that we live off of. And that is from the generous donations of builders, contractors, and developers going back to our beginning in 1987. And like any organization, we're always on the lookout to grow and to expand our programs and to increase our financial capabilities. So we're always looking for more money.
Imagine for a moment, Mark, you and I are sitting back. You've got a scotch in one hand. You're smoking one of your nice fancy cigars that you just unwrapped. And you're explaining to me what the endowment is all about. Fill me in on this. Pretend I know nothing. Tell me what it is and why is it important to home builders and why should they participate?
Sure. The endowment's got a pretty straightforward mission. It's about education and training, and we do some research, but it's primarily education and training. It's about recruiting and preparing the next generation to go into the residential workforce. And we do that through a number of ways, but I'll start with why is this important? Well, I think all builders and developers will tell you that the workforce shortage, which has really come to the fore in the last 10 years, the shortage of skilled craftspeople, of people getting residential construction management degrees is real. NAHB's chief economist, Rob Dietz, will tell you there's roughly 300,000 to 400,000 empty jobs, open jobs in the home building industry in the United States. And we're not unique. Home building's not unique. Transportation is short of people, healthcare, the service industries, on and on and on. So we're competing with other industries that are also in a shortfall of people with skills to do what they need to do. And so that's a problem. And that's why it's important. You can't build a home unless you have the carpenters and the bricklayers and the concrete guys and the engineers and the surveyors and the home inspectors. There's so many different people on a job site. At any given time, there's probably 15 different trades on a home build. And so those contractors need people that one, want to come in and build homes, that want to do the job, and two, are able to do it, have the skills and the expertise to install a floor, hang a window, or to install a roof, or do the framing, or prepare the site. It's a lot of different people with different skill sets. And as a country, we kind of got away from the skilled trades, and everyone had to go to a 4-year school and get a degree. We're all paying the price for that right now. So as an industry, it's whether it's our responsibility or not, it's up to us to go out and find young people and show them the opportunities that are there and to prepare them to become part of the future workforce.
Are you doing the hands-on training or are you providing the funding for educational institutions to tap into to create the curriculum?
Sure. We do not do any actual training. We ask people for money and we give it away to organizations that do good work with it. In the training realm, I'll start with our legacy program, which we call our HELP program, which is our home building education leadership program, we just added our 60th university or 2-year college to that program this year. Typically, construction management programs, the way they've evolved in the United States, they don't offer residential. They offer commercial and heavy. So a young person may go to school, they want to get into construction. A survey says over half of them want to build homes, yet they're taught how to build airports and roads and office buildings and hotels. So that's what they end up doing. That's what they get recruited for. So when the endowment started back in the mid-'80s, that was the first program that was launched. And the idea being there is we would provide 2- and 4-year schools. And we're in big schools now. We're in Michigan State, Cal Poly, Purdue. But we're also in small community colleges, Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, for instance, and everything in between. Schools that have a construction management program, but they want to build out their residential offering to young people. And so we help them with our financial resources, hire faculty, hire people from the industry, create curriculum so they can build those minors and majors and degree and certificate programs and maybe even graduate programs. So there's a pathway for young people that come in that want to build and want to build homes so that they're able to learn that while they're in school. And it's been very successful. 2/3 of the kids in our 60 schools that are in these CM programs end up in the home building industry. And even greater is that 10 years after graduation, 40% of them end up owning their own company or becoming executives with larger companies. So it works. And we help schools that don't do anything in residential, but we also fund schools that have been in the residential education area for a long time, expand their programs. And I refer to this as our builder factory because these are kids that come out, get hired as supervisors, project managers, superintendents, sort of that first rung of the professional level of the building industry, and then move on up through the grades as their career advances. But they need to start with some basic education at the 2 or 4 year level, and the demand for those kids is great.
Let me take this further upstream. Let's say I'm a humble principal at a grade school. Can I apply for a grant because we no longer have shop class and we want to bring it back in? Because something from the conversation that I had with Jim Tobin was once a kid has a power tool in his hand, it changes everything because the possibility is there. They can feel how this thing works, and the tactile feel. It's one thing to explain something, reading in a magazine, here are the pictures. But once you put a power saw or an impact, it changes the game. So
It sure does.
is that something
And
that I could do, again, as a grade school principal? We want to bring shop back in. Can I approach you and say, we want to hire a teacher, put together a curriculum?
yes. And on the skilled labor front, which is what we're talking about now, I refer to it two ways. You got to plant the seed and you got to grow the seed. The first thing that we do to plant the seed is we started a program called Career Connections back in 2018 when I started. We started at zero. And in 2025, we'll have run 136 skilled residential trades career events around the country. And we do these in partnership with local associations. NAHB their strength is their network of over 500 local and state home builder associations. I talked about the merger of the Builder Show and the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show. Another partner in this effort is the National Kitchen and Bath Association, and they have a network of chapters. So we work with their local chapters as well. And they come to us and say, we'd like to put on a career event. And I just looked at one that just took place in Iowa. And the local Home Builders Association organized an event for 1,500 kids that got to visit 70 workstations, got to work with the tools that you're talking about. So they work with the tools, and it could be hanging a door, it could be installing a roof, it could be placing concrete, it could be working with survey equipment, it could be HVAC or electrical, 70 different workstations. So they get to feel and use the tools. They get to see and work with the actual materials. But I think the most valuable part of it is there were 250 volunteers at that event. And so those are contractors and builders. And hopefully these are most cases, high school kids, sometimes middle school kids. And they get to say, man, this guy or gal is doing this. And they look like they're making a good life for themselves. Maybe this is something I want to look at. So that is our plant the seed activity. Our goal next year is for 150 programs with 150,000 kids going through it. And really the limiting factor there is the local associations that want to do this, and we help them do that financially. We provide them with best practices and how to and guides and all that kind of stuff, and sort of created a community of organizations that are doing this. So we look forward to that growing. And we fund that through something called the Skilled Labor Fund, which NHB is a partner in. We manage as the endowment. Kitchen and Bath Association's in it. NARI, which is the National Association of Remodeling Industries, is a member, is a partner, founding partner of that, as is Endeavor Business Media, which publishes Professional Builder and Professional Remodeler here in the States. They help us get the word out about it, help us with some of our outreach there. So that's our plant the seed activity. Okay, so now you got the kid interested. It needs to be trained. And we partner with the Home Builders Institute to provide curriculum and instructor support, lessons plans, and support for questions from instructors to bring that shop class back to the school. I mentioned I grew up in the Detroit area. I'm old enough. I had welding I had auto
Yeah.
body, I had machine shop, but we also had a class that built a home and sold the home every year. And all that is gone. The giant facility I was in high school is now a sportsplex. And so the bringing that shop class back to school in partnership with HBI, who has a nationally certified curriculum, which is important because you have to get the curriculums approved by somebody. Typically, it's the local school board or school district. In some cases, it's a state board of education. So HBI having this national certification, they help with all that process. So they line up high schools for your local principal that you talked about. He can approach HBI and say, "Hey, I would like to, offer." It's called the Schools to Skills program. I call it Bring the Shop Class Back program. Offers that curriculum to them. They can apply for that, and then in a lot of cases, we're able to pay for those licenses and the curriculum and fund that. So they come to us every year, a couple times a year, with a list of schools. Here's what we want to do. We've never said no. And hopefully we can continue to do that in the future. We're in about 400, probably 500 high schools by now, and a long way to go. There's 14,000 high schools in the United States. And again, it's the school's willingness to actually offer this to their kids, which has been the limiting factor up till now. And fortunately, we're seeing that change. There's been a cultural shift. I think American society or culture has woken up to the fact that not every kid needs to spend $250,000 to get an art degree from Brown, when maybe becoming an electrician or a plumber would be more satisfying, more productive, more financially rewarding, more entrepreneurial opportunities involved, a lot of upside to it. We're seeing a willingness to think about that and agree to it and take part in it than we did certainly 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. It's changed for the better because we need skilled workers. Again, in all industries, manufacturing, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, even you're competing with the U.S. Navy because they've got to build a submarine program. They're looking for
Sure.
200,000 people, and then they'll teach you. If you have a skill, great. If not, we'll teach you how to weld, how to.
Yeah.
Like, it's mind-boggling to me that you've got. And I think back to grade school and high school. I think the first thing is let's get rid of a guidance counselor because I think they polluted the waters by saying, "Oh, you need to get your 4-year degree in gender dance theory or whatever that is." And we've got a whole generation of kids that are living in their parents' basement because they graduated in a debt with a degree that will never have a pathway forward to a successful career. From that, they'll never start dating, which means they're not going to get married, they're not going to have kids, and they're not going to buy a home. And that all
Well,
starts with a guidance counselor that said, "Well, uh, you don't want to work with your hands. You want to go to university." And I'm not
well,
saying, yeah, sorry.
principals and guidance counselors, administrators, however you want to lump them together, they were evaluated based upon the number of kids that went to a 4-year institution. So that's where they drove kids to. It's pretty straightforward. And as sort of the godfather of the skilled trades here in the United States is Mike Holmes. He does a lot of TV shows,
Yeah.
and he says we're spending money we don't have to educate kids for jobs that don't exist. Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head. So teaching kids to hit the nail on the head might be a better path for them. And frankly, for some kids, a 4-year degree is just not their path. And for some kids, it absolutely is. And it shouldn't be plan A and plan B. This should be the other plan A. And I always tell the story of my neighbor who, when I first moved in my neighborhood, he was going to work in coveralls and a pickup truck and fixing air conditioners and furnaces. And now he owns a HVAC company and does quite well and has probably, I don't know, 40, 50 trucks running around. And, he's a business person now. So he's done quite well by pursuing that path. So it's available. And we try to make young people aware of it and then provide them with a path to pursue that. And that's what the endowment does through the Skilled Labor Fund. That's what we do at the college level. The other thing that we do at the college level and at the high school level is we support NAHB's network of student chapters. And you mentioned you're going to the Builder Show. You have to attend, and I'm going to find you at the bookstore and make sure you do this. Attend the NHB Student Chapter Award Ceremony. And this is where you'll see 1,000 kids in one ballroom wearing their school colors, singing their fight songs. The energy is unlike anything else in the industry. And they are rooting for their schools to win awards based upon projects that their school teams have submitted for a community development, a real community development on a real piece of dirt that is going to get built. And it's incredible. When I started, the student chapters numbered about 70 across the country. I think they're over 140 right now. The endowment is very proud to support that program. And one of the things we do is we pay for all the kids' travel to come to the show so they're able to do that, because a lot of them wouldn't be able to, or the schools can't afford it. So we help them do that. It was a big program that was important to one of our founders, the late Herb Kohler, the Kohler Company, was a big supporter of that. He offers a fund that helps. He gave us a lot of money to support that effort, and we do that through his fund. And we have something called the Herb Kohler Leadership Award for the best student of the year. We give them some money. Supporting the school chapters is another piece of that whole, making the kids feel like they're part of an industry. And when they come to the Builder Show, they see that. They see the size, the number of opportunities. They've gone to school and they've learned about technically how to build a house. But when they come to the show, they're like, wow, this is a real industry. There's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of opportunities here. There's a lot of money here. I'm glad I chose this path. I can't wait to get on the job site and start
Yeah, you're
working.
fanning that flame, man. That's the important thing. Get them while they're young, get them excited, let them see what the potential is, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this one question, Mark. In the 8 years that you've been doing this plus, is there any one story, let's call it an investment, because that is what you're doing. You're investing in someone's future. Any one particular one that really stands out when you think about it, it almost brings a tear to your eye?
There's a young man named Miles Carditis who came out of one of our help programs, who's become a leader for getting young people involved in construction. He's become a leader at the national level in the association already. And every time I hear him speak, I have a sense of pride for what the endowment's been able to do for him personally, and what he is going to what he is giving back to the industry now. He works for a large builder in Georgia, but he's giving back to the industry and to the student chapter network that he came out of. So that's something, and we have many cases of that. He's just one that comes to mind. And I know builders that are now in their 50s and 60s who started out at one of our help programs. And, at the high school level, it's so rewarding when I see these kids go to these career connection events and you see the light go off in their head, go, gosh, I've always liked to work with my hands. Here's something I can do, and I can make money doing it. I can have a job, and I can get an apartment and have a car and buy clothes and off to the races. So, I see that all the time when I spend time with these kids.
Do you think you can hook us up with Miles? That would be, I think, a great interview to talk about
Sure.
his
Yeah,
journey.
absolutely. Be happy to do it.
All right. Well, my friend, I see the runway ahead. Is there anything that I've missed? Anything that you want to touch on?
Final thing is, we do offer direct scholarships to kids. This year, we didn't hit 100, we hit 99 direct scholarships to kids. So that's our traditional activity of an endowment. We do that through about 15 different, in my world, are called restricted funds or donor-directed funds, where maybe somebody in Texas says, I want to fund a high school kid who wants to go into skilled trades. So we offer scholarships to help them do that. Maybe it's to help the young person buy the right clothing or make their first down security deposit on an apartment so they can go take the training, or buy that first set of tools that they need, et cetera, et cetera. So we've helped 99 of those kids this year, and that will certainly grow next year. And again, it always comes back to money. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, if you want to learn about the endowment, go to nationalhousingendowment.org. And we have a donate page there. So if you like what we're doing, we're lean and mean. There's 3 of us, including me, on staff. So we do all this on a very lean and mean basis. almost all the money we bring in goes right back out to the industry. So our overhead's very low. That's important with any contribution-based organization. And again, there's only 3 of us that make this happen every day. And we're governed by a board of 40 builders and developers that all want to give back to the industry, that believe in our mission and direct our work. So I think we're doing a good thing, and we need to do more of it. And we need help to do that.
Well, I'm hoping I can amplify this for you, Mark, and be sure to send me all the links because we'll incorporate those in the show notes so
Sure.
people can download as a result of this. So one last question, and I want to tap into your Christian faith here for a second. And this is something that I don't foresee happening for many, putting the emphasis on many, many years. But I want you to pretend that you woke up one morning and you're dead. Oxymoron, you woke up dead, but next thing you know, you're standing at heaven's gate with St. Peter. And being the tech age that we're in, he's got an iPad and he's flicking through this thing and he's giggling and he looks serious and he says, Mark, come over here. And what you realize, he's got the story of your life on the iPad, little vignettes of things that have stood out in your life. And he's going through, and again, oh yeah, that's kind of, I don't know about that one. And then he looks you right in the eye, Mark, and he says, not today. Nope, not today. There's something you haven't done yet. What's that one thing that Mark Pursell hasn't done yet?
Oh, at some point, I'd like to write a book, a mystery thriller. Personally, I would find that gratifying. Something with some life lessons in it, hopefully. And I'd like to share some of my experiences and things that I've learned. And I've always been guided by, if you get up every morning and you help somebody, you've had a good day. And so I'd like to include that in the book. So if I haven't done that, then I haven't lived my life completely. But, I think there's a lot that we can share with younger people. Obviously, a career path and a way for them to move forward, but we can also share the values that have helped us build our own lives and bring that to the next generation.
I'm a visual thinker, so everything I see is in pictures and I have to interpret it. And I just had this image of you sitting with a fedora, smoking a cigar, sitting at the old Corona typewriter and just typing away that book of yours soon to come.
Oh, that would be fun. I don't know about a funny story is my dad worked his way through college repairing the old typewriters,
Yeah.
the bangers.
I got one sitting in the corner, man. Mark, I want to thank you for taking time out today, my friend. I'm at your service. Anything I can do to help you with the what you're working on, I'm here. Let me know.
Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I want to thank all your viewers for taking the time to spend a few minutes with us today.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.